welcome in to the Skol Purple podcast, and tough loss for the Vikings against Cincinnati in overtime, 27-24. Vikings fall to 7-7 now on the year, and it was a rough one to say the least. Considering the Vikings, it felt again like they controlled a lot of the game. They had that earlier this year too. I can't remember what game it was where it felt like they were in control. Oh yeah, the Broncos game, the primetime game at Denver, felt like they were in control of that game. Obviously turnovers, and also turnovers today or in the game on Saturday were a big reason why the Vikings didn't win the game. Surprise, surprise. Felt like the Vikings were in control, especially in that third quarter, and then the fourth quarter kind of sparked the comeback for Cincinnati towards the end of the third into the fourth. So, yeah, unfortunate. The Vikings, like I said, fall to 7-7. And it's really an interesting few weeks coming up here now because you play the Lions twice. And if you beat them twice, if the Vikings still win out and the Lions lose to Dallas, which I think is a very high likelihood, or at least a high possibility of happening, then the Vikings would still win the division. So basically the Vikings need to win out, the Lions need to lose out, which obviously the Vikings beating the Lions twice that's probably going to be the biggest issue on that criteria there. But it's possible. I think this week's going to go a long way towards determining that. But even if the Vikings don't win the division, don't win out and don't win the division, they still have a pretty good chance to make the playoffs. Because a lot of other teams in the NFC, I don't know if you've been paying attention or not to some of the other teams, but there's been a lot of people, I guess, quote unquote, crapping the bed, so to speak, in terms of their playoff hopes. The Packers are one of those teams. Because the Packers are now 6-8, I believe it is, after losing to the Buccaneers on Sunday. But that is one team, the Buccaneers, that maybe would be causing havoc for the Vikings if they weren't probably in the driver's seat to win the NFC South. But the good news for the Vikings is if the Buccaneers win the NFC South, then the Vikings don't have to worry about it because they have the tiebreaker over New Orleans. So as long as they have the same record as New Orleans at the end of the season, they have the tiebreaker. So I believe that's how that works. At least it always has been. So the Vikings would get that final playoff spot if that was the case. But like even Seattle, another team that was kind of vying for that playoff position. The Rams, another team, the Rams did beat the Commanders on Sunday, but there's a lot of unknowns. But anyways, back to the game. Getting a little ahead of myself. The Vikings lost in Cincinnati. The 2 turnovers inside the 30-yard line of Cincinnati. 2 really bad interceptions. The second one being absolutely unfathomably bad. Like, what are you doing, Nick Mullins? Anybody that's forgiving Nick Mullins for that interception in terms of like, oh, that didn't have an impact on the game. Are you kidding me? You're kidding me, right? Like, come on. That is like the people that are out there that are, blaming O'Connell more than Mullins for this loss. Like, yes, I know he had 2 bad play calls or even maybe just 1 bad play call at the end, the final play call that he had to run quarterback sneak again. No. O'Connell called a pretty good game for most of that game, I think. And so to say, oh, well, O'Connell should be fired for that play call, that final play call, it's like, come on, people. How many good coaches are available out there right now anyway? First of all. Second of all, how many bad coaches are in the NFL currently with jobs? Quite a few. But anyways. So, yes, the 2 or 1 play call on the final drive was bad. KOC's had some bad games. Honestly, I'm more frustrated probably with KOC's play calling, and this probably is more of a reflection on Josh Dobbs, but just the lack of anything offensively against the Raiders. And until the final drive, that frustrated me way more than anything O'Connell did against Cincinnati. I'm going to be completely honest here about that. That was more frustrating. The Bears game on Monday night to me was more frustrating. But I think, again, it has a lot to do with Josh Dobbs. I think O'Connell tried to maybe shift a few things here and there to maybe make it a little bit better for Dobbs, but it's hard to do that, to try and get your offense to do things Josh Dobbs wants to do or maybe is more comfortable doing in a very short amount of time. Now, if you had the whole offseason to do that, yeah, sure. You could do that kind of thing. The offense gets used to it and you have success doing it. But it just seemed like the offense was not in sync the last couple of starts from Josh Dobbs. And that's why they brought in Nick Mullins. And it seemed like it felt a lot like a Kirk Cousins game, other than the interceptions, which I don't think Kirk Cousins would have thrown either one of those interceptions, by the way. I know I'm not a big Kirk lover, but I will admit that Vikings do not probably lose that game with Kirk Cousins. But yeah, I just think the Vikings look so much better as an offense against Cincinnati. And part of that, too, is the Vikings were playing a pretty bad Cincinnati defense, all things considered. I think everybody that keeps clamoring for Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator, to get a coaching job, need to sit down. They said that on the broadcast. So many people, I think they say that every game Cincinnati plays that I've heard broadcasted over the last 2 years. He needs to get a coaching job. He's not that good. Cincinnati's defense is not that good. They have some good players, and I get that the talent has gone away a little bit from Cincinnati's defense this year in particular, with Jesse Bates going to Atlanta and a couple other players they've lost as well, but he's not that good of a coach, coordinator anyway, based on what I've seen from him. So, anyways, that's just my little hot take there. But yeah, I didn't think that the offense played that bad yesterday. I thought they played well enough to win, minus the 2 Nick Mullins turnovers. Because if you make a field goal, just a field goal on those 2 possessions, so he throws the ball away or the ball doesn't get intercepted on either one of those plays, Greg Joseph could have missed one of those 2 kicks, obviously, because he's Greg Joseph and, the Vikings kick and curse, all that, blah, blah, blah. But he's probably going to make at least one of those 2. Hence, the Vikings don't go into overtime. Hence, the game is over. So then we don't even have to worry about Kevin O'Connell having that discussion of Kevin O'Connell, oh, terrible play call, back-to-back terrible play calls. Now, I get it. Chandler was running well. You should have given him the carry on one of those 2. I would have said, going back, I would have probably ran it with Chandler on that 3rd down. And then on 4th down, if he didn't get it, unless you lost yardage, then maybe try a quarterback sneak. But if you look at that 4th down, you saw Flores kind of running towards O'Connell. I think he was clamoring for him to say timeout, and he should have called a timeout because then the game was over, basically. Even if the Vikings would have gotten a stop, who's to say the Vikings would have gone down this field and scored at that point? So they should have called a timeout. Keeping that timeout did them almost no good. Well, obviously no good. It would have done them very little good anyway, because even if the Bengals go down and get a field goal, the game's over, and as it was, because they kicked the game-winning field goal. So you need to call that timeout there, because Garrett Bradbury, I don't know, he just got looked like he almost got chop blocked into Nick Mullins, and Mullins didn't even have a chance to push there to get ahead for the 1st down. So anyways, I've noticed that the last couple of years, the Vikings need to get better at the quarterback sneak or they just need a quarterback that can do it better, because even Cousins has had his share of issues with quarterback sneaks as well. Part of it's because he's not that big. He's 6'3" compared to like a Josh Allen who's 6'5" or whatever, but 6'6", whatever. And same thing with Mullins. But yeah, they maybe need to get more creative with them. I don't know. Mix up the snap counts a little bit more. But yeah, one of those two quarterback sneaks should not have happened, at least. So, anyways, we get it. That's not why the Vikings lost the game. Let's just leave that at that. Also, let's not forget about the defense. They weren't guiltless in all of this. I mean, overall, they played a pretty good game. So if you spread those 24 points out that the Bengals scored, it's not bad. Jake Browning looked pretty good at times, but 2 or 3 big third and long conversions. One, I think, was to T. Higgins. One to Jamar Chase before he got hurt. Those are just unacceptable. Like those are unacceptable. The one, I think there was like a 3rd and 15 or more that the Bengals converted, and I think that was the one that Chase converted. It's like, how is he that open? You had nobody going to the quarterback hardly at all. I think they rushed 3 on that play. If I would have to go back and look, so maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like they only rushed 3 guys on that play. If it's 3rd and long, I'm sorry, but that is almost always got to be a blitzing down, because you have to apply pressure to force a short throw, and then you rally to make the tackle short of the sticks. That's what 3rd down and long should mean as a defense. You force the quarterback to throw it quickly, and then he dumps it off to the running back, dumps it off to the underneath route, whoever it is, and then you rally up to make the tackle, hopefully 5 or more yards short of the first down on that play. So that is, that to me was the most frustrating part of yesterday, was those 3rd and long conversions. I get it. You're going to have one maybe of those a game where they convert a 3rd and long, but it's like there were like 2 or 3, and maybe they weren't all 3rd and 19 or whatever it was, but there were 3rd and like 9, 3rd and 10. I think that's what it was. The final play that set him up into field goal range for Tyler Boyd. It's like, come on, guys. You can't allow that to happen. Byron Murphy got absolutely burnt on that play. So I'm kind of becoming a little bit more skeptical on Byron Murphy Jr. Now I get it. He probably had to have help on that play. So maybe some people would say that that wasn't entirely his fault. That's probably true, but come on, you can't leave that guy that open. I mean, he ended up almost coming back to make the deflection, but yeah, again, you can't let that happen. So, anyways, that's going to about wrap it up. Playoffs are still within reach. The next 3 games, I think the Vikings, even with only winning 1 game of the next 3, now I'm not saying I want them to only win 1 of the next 3 games. I'm just saying, even if they only win 1 of the next 3 games, if they finish 8-9, it's not impossible for them to make the playoffs. Like, they could make the playoffs. They'll need a little help, probably, but they could easily make the playoffs at 8-9. I don't want that to be the case. I'm just saying it could happen. So it's possible. But I think this week, Detroit just beat the brakes off Denver. I think this week the Vikings have to get the win against Detroit. I think that's a critical one. If they don't get this win this week, it's going to be like you have to win at least 1 of the next 2, if not all of them. So the Vikings have put themselves in a tough situation, because now it's a little bit more difficult to have wiggle room. Like, you have 3 games left. The wiggle room, like, is about it right here. Like, early in the season for making the playoffs, your wiggle room was here. When you were 0-3, you had more wiggle room. You don't have much anymore. So it's time to start getting that mindset of like, okay, this is do or die. We've got to win this game, be a little more aggressive earlier in the game, Kevin O'Connell, on 4th downs. Not just at the end of the game, That's one thing. I'm not saying Kevin O'Connell hasn't made mistakes. He's made plenty of mistakes this season. He'd be the first one to tell you that. But I would say to think that you need to fire him is absurd at this point. The guy has had most of the year without his starting quarterback, and the Vikings have been, 500 without him, basically. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And again, Brian Flores, will give him credit again for what he's done with his defense, has been incredible. He continues to amaze me, but obviously the fourth quarter wasn't great, and those big, huge third down and long conversions just kill me. You got to pressure on those, man. So, anyways, that is where I'm at after the Vikings fall to the Bengals. Just wanted to throw out my thoughts here quickly. I'm going to try and get a Lions preview in for this week, but then I will not have a post game of that game. I don't believe. I'm not planning on doing a post game of the Lions game, the first game anyway. But then I'm hoping to also do a Green Bay preview, and then a post game preview for that will also not be happening. But then I'm hoping to do another Lions preview, and then hopefully a post game after the second Lions game. So that's kind of the schedule I'm hoping for. So stay tuned for any more information on that. Tough loss for the Vikes, but the season isn't completely lost yet. There's still hope, but what's it going to net the Vikings? That's probably the next question. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. As always, Skol Vikes.